Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of Minions of the Zoo. I'm your keeper this evening, Skep Tock, and with me I have a single minion, but a powerful one, a powerful sorcerer named Harry. How you doing, Harry?
Powerful. Powerful. It's not a word that's used to describe me very often.
Yeah. Well, you have soft power, software power.
Oh, that's true. The power that comes from knowing stuff, as opposed to the power that's given to people based on arbitrary characteristics. Like
No.
knowing somebody else. I had a excuse me. I've been trying to sort of soft manage a problem with one of my customers. There's this one guy in this one group that decided he didn't like the way things were getting done. So he somehow, excuse me, convinced everybody that he should be in charge of deciding which of the bugs were important and which ones were less important. So he volunteered himself as doing the triage.
For the list of bugs.
For the list of bugs. And what he doesn't seem to understand is the amount of time I have to devote to him is a fraction of my time. Not only that, but I don't necessarily need a technical manager. So I've been sort of slowly training him to cut it out.
Yeah, good. Who could technically manage you? Seriously, at this point in your career, I mean, other than having just like a really brilliant mentor, you're pretty much on top of your game, aren't you?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people I know that I respect who know things, but this guy is not necessarily one of them. So there was a piece of work that was in the system, and he had rated it very, very highly. Now, there's about $20,000 worth of hardware that's not being deployed because of the order in which it's like half deployed. And it's just been weeks because he's ordered things in a stupid fashion. Yeah. And on some level, I sort of don't care, but I kind of snapped at one point and then forgot that I didn't care and decided that something was stupid, and I just closed it as won't fix. Like, I'm just not going to do this. And I gave him the following reasons. I just said, there's an easy workaround. All of this stuff is going to be replaced with new hardware and software soon anyway, so I'm not going to invest a bunch of time optimizing a legacy system. No, I'm just not going to do it.
Yep.
There's a waste of my time and a waste of your time. So, moving on. So he decided he was going to weigh in on this and said, well, when's it going to be replaced, and are these features going to be there? And in my opinion, it's not going to happen very soon. I think this should just get done anyway. Well, the gauntlet's been thrown down.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've basically been trying to inform this guy about exactly what his purview is. Your purview is to provide input on what you think the importance of certain bugs are. Yeah.
And that's
I was really tempted to just send him a copy of the org chart with me at the bottom, and this is for my biggest customer, and then the owner and CEO of the company at the top, and then just put a little sign that just says, "Where's this guy's name?" Kind of like "Where's Waldo?" But where's this guy?
Exactly.
Because nowhere between me and the CEO does this guy show up on the org chart. Like, I literally don't have to listen to you, and I'm just being nice. Because it's actually useful if he provides input. But I just came back and said, well, if the person who opened the bug, who I've actually worked with for almost 20 years, is that she knows how to get my attention. If she thinks I'm wrong, she'll let me know. Essentially just letting him know that I think that if he wants to triage bugs, that's fine, but it's not up to him to decide on the technical approach and all the other stuff. I'm politely saying...
background?
Well, he does, and I've run into this kind of stuff before. I think this is commonly what people do when they're afraid that they're becoming irrelevant. So what they do is, if they don't think their work counts for enough, they look for ways to insert themselves into organizing or criticizing other people's work. So that way, he's able to sort of say, well, everything that Harry gets done it either wouldn't have been done in the right order, or wouldn't have been pushed to getting done, or wouldn't have been done correctly if it hadn't been for me. So I'm going to take 20% of Harry's magic and just siphon it off onto me. And then if they go to get rid of people, they'll say, well, you can't get rid of me. I'm busy keeping track of Harry so he doesn't run amok.
I'm Harry's liaison.
I'm Harry's liaison. I'm the guy that takes the reports from the users and then prints them out and then takes them over and gives them to Harry. Will you give them to him directly? No, I give them to my assistant. Then he gives them. It's
someone to do that.
It's the whole TPM report bullshit thing. Oh, and I feel for people. I mean, he's an older guy, and he's probably worried about what the next year is going to bring. I mean, we all probably need to be a little bit. So I'm not unsympathetic, but at the same time, if you want to get metaphorically punched in the dick, just keep picking at me.
But I know you well enough to know that you prefer, because it's smart, to handle these types of situations in the most effortless, smooth, seamless, nobody has to know anything but you way that you can. Yeah, I don't picture you being very confrontational organizationally. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, I'm usually not, unless I'm pushed past a certain threshold. It sort of goes from 0 to infinity, I'm afraid. And it takes a lot to push me past that threshold.
I was going to say, I bet I would think that somebody has to be overtly antagonistic to you and unfair. I think that's another button that you have. You don't like unfair.
No, well, I noticed that this guy deliberately put, in the top, there's, like I said, the thing with the $20,000 of the hardware that's desperately needed, by the way. Okay. He put that at number 9. He put that at number 9 on the list. And I got to say
the 8 things in front of it.
The 8 things in front of it, not one of them was as important, but about 5 of them had his name on them, as in they were things that he wanted.
Imagine my shot.
I've
never been around an organization that worked like that.
I'm going, why? It's like, isn't anybody paying attention to this? It's like, has nobody noticed that this guy is doing this? It's like, it's so obvious. It's the most obvious thing in the world.
Yeah.
Again, I have sympathy for the guy. He's not a bad guy. He's not a bad guy, and he's probably just doing what he's doing out of frustration, some combination of frustration and fear.
You'll take care of him, won't you?
I will take care of him, but he needs to cut it out. He needs to just simmer down and not.
You'll train him, and
I will
take care of him.
I've reminded him about exactly what the perimeters of his wheelhouse are on a few occasions.
Yeah.
And at some point he'll figure it out. I mean, there have been a couple times early on when he was pushing me on something, I just said, well, if you do this, I'm going to do this, and then you're going to lose. And here's why. I mean, it was just one of those things where I'm just trying to save everybody a bunch of time and hurt feelings.
I'm curious as to, and I'm not trying to dox anybody or find anything out, but does the firm that this person works for, are they in a manufacturing type sector, or are they in kind of an information management more sector?
They do not make a physical product.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm not amazed.
But big companies, you can hide a lot of stuff can go hidden inside a big company.
Yes, it can. Oh my gosh.
It's the comics that people like us enjoy. It's like everybody enjoys a little Dilbert, but you get into the good stuff, you start getting into 1FTE. That's the one I sent you copies of. Yeah, 1FTE is great.
You turned me on to that, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd seen that before.
It's a good grade of work comedy.
It is.
XKCD is also a lot of fun, but that's mostly something that people read to convince each other how clever they are. Because you have to be clever, you have to be relatively well educated to get a lot of that humor. And so it's really just a secret handshake to go, oh yeah, I went to school too or something. I kind of don't like stuff like that as much. I think it's kind of weirdly elitist, and that sort of annoys me.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a matter of tone. It's okay to be to celebrate sophistication, to celebrate complex ideas and how they reverberate through culture and make interesting cultural artifacts that people have opinions about. But I think that, yeah.
Well, I told you I had this one customer, not the smartest guy in the world necessarily or anything else, but he knew enough about one topic, one narrow subject, that he was one of the world's experts in this one narrow subject, to the point where when Hollywood needs a consultant on this subject, I can't say what it is because it would immediately identify the guy. But if there is they need somebody who, as a consultant for this one topic, they call this guy. And, he talks really slowly and really kind of calmly. But I respect the fact that he knows something, he's actually mastered something, and he really knows it. I like talking to him more often than not, a lot better than some East Coast person who's kind of a little bit educated about a lot of things. I respect people who do hard work and actually get to be really good at whatever it is they do. You don't have to be the best in the world. You just have to be good enough that you're, making a difference.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Of course,
and I've met a lot
of things, so I'm probably not.
Dude, I have met a lot. I've met a lot of people like that. People who are just good, decent folks who know what the hell they're talking about.
Yep.
And usually they're smart enough to stay in their lane too. You don't hear them.
That's the thing.
They're not like Alyssa Milano or Madonna or something just spouting off about shit they don't know anything about. I actually don't think Alyssa Milano is all that stupid. I think there's a certain amount of smart that's struggling to get out of the casing of propaganda and conditioning that she's in. She's just been in Hollywood too long. Starting out when she was very, very young, she's just been surrounded by the bubble.
Yeah.
I don't think she's actually as dumb as some of these other people.
I think I detect about 110 IQ. Actually,
yeah, she's okay.
She's okay. But she's totally totally given over to the propaganda.
I think every now and then you can kind of see the cognitive dissonance start to break down. There's like a little twitch. Like you almost sense
intellectual integrity down there.
You sense that she's almost going to shake it off occasionally, but then she reorients.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
A mind wasted.
It is,
but there's a lot of minds wasted to all this secular, religious, progressive nonsense. And the sad thing is that all the things that they say they want to accomplish, the things they try to do just make those things less likely to ever come to pass. I want all these people to be better off and be treated well. It's like, no, everything you're doing is the opposite, is going to give the opposite result.
Exactly right. But they can't see they can't see past what they want to say. And the reason that they want to say the things that they say are not because necessarily they even believe they're true. It's because their friends are saying it, because other people have told them they're true.
Yeah, it seems like they talk about how much they care about other people, but at the same time, they spend most of their time talking about themselves.
Absolutely right.
Let me tell you how I feel about starving children.
Yes.
Well, maybe if you, spend less time talking about how you feel about starving children and more time helping starving children, then I'll believe you.
It often takes the form of course I care about the starving children, but what do we know about the word but?
It's always followed by something stupid.
Well, everything in front of the word but is bullshit. Everything in front of the but is non-operative.
Yeah.
And I don't think most of these people really care much more about their next dopamine hit and serotonin hit.
Well, before the show,
they just go from good time to good time.
We were talking about space, And I'm really still struggling to care about this Artemis mission. I mean, I'm generally kind of skeptical about most manned space travel to begin with. I think there may come a day when we can move basically where we have better propulsion systems and better life support and better lots of things, and it might make sense. But right now, it's so expensive to put people in orbit, or worse yet, to send them to the moon. I'm just trying to figure out, other than politics, what's the point?
You don't think that's a good use of $100 billion?
No, I don't.
Well, aren't you an old stick in the mud?
Well, the thing is that with Apollo, we got a huge return on investment for every dollar spent. The estimates I've seen say it's about 10 to 1. So for every $10 we spent...
the secondary and tertiary effects of that can't even be calculated, Harry.
I can't...
What we got from that.
I can't think of what we're going to get out of the Artemis mission for the money that we're putting in. You know, if you
get all the same great things that we got out of Apollo, Harry, we'll be able to place laser reflectors, more laser reflectors on the moon.
Yeah.
More moonquake detection sites. We may even kill a few people up there.
Well, maybe
that'll be great.
Did they ever make snow angels on the moon? Because that would have been great. Maybe since we're going to send some women up there, they'll make better looking snow angels. Or something.
Harrison Schmitt almost did. He almost did one. He almost made a snow angel on his face.
Well, that dust is it'd be kind of like rolling around in volcanic ash. It's not a good idea.
Right. That's exactly.
I think that's the only thing that really stopped them.
Yeah, that's a lot of the volcanic rocks have the concordial fracture makes for little hooks.
Yeah,
tiny hooks. And,
well, there's that, and then there's this whole World Cup thing. I was actually sort of shocked. Do you know what the deal is that the women's team got with Megan Rapinoe and that whole crowd complaining? You know what they actually ultimately got?
No, what?
What they're doing is they're taking the winnings that the men are getting and the winnings that the females are getting, putting it into a joint pool, and then splitting it 50-50 between the men and women's teams. I kid you not.
Wait a minute. Say that last part again.
Okay, so if the men win $20 million in prize money, and the women win $2 million in prize money, the men and the women each get $11 million. These are just hypothetical numbers to illustrate a point. But it's actually not that. The ratios are actually pretty close. Because nobody wants to watch women's soccer.
No.
And as somebody who's actually helped more than one professional women's sports franchise professionally in my life, okay, can't say which ones, but more than one.
I
think the number's
in the
2.
roller derby business, huh?
No, it was 2. It was 2. I'll tell you later. But
I'm teasing.
I have no issue with women's sports where it kind of makes sense, and I don't think soccer is that big in the U.S. But the point is, there's reasons why they're not selling the tickets and getting in the revenue. It's just not that exciting to watch soccer to begin with, and watching like a slower version of soccer is even less interesting.
It's absolutely soporific.
So the money is just not there. So they solve we don't get enough money in to pay you what you're asking for by simply just taking it from the men. And the men just apparently decided to just give in to this. Because if I was playing on the men's team, I think I would, if I was a professional soccer player and I had money, I think I would just blow off being on the World Cup team. I don't see, it's because it's kind of ridiculous to give half your prize money to somebody else who can't draw in the same kind of crowds and get the same kind of revenue.
Those guys want to play. Those guys love the game, and they love the game at that level.
It's such a ripoff, though.
It is, though. It absolutely. I was just looking at this. The vast disparity in prize money between men's and women's soccer teams is justified by simple math. FIFA's prize money for the men's World Cup is 13 times the amount for the women. $400 million dollar prize pool versus 30 million prize pool. So the assumption goes that revenue must be the reason for it. And, that's a good point. The most popular set of numbers to make the claim comes from a Forbes report that alleged that the Women's World Cup generated $131 million in revenue, while the Men's World Cup generated $6 billion. What the Wall Street Journal found on Tuesday was, however, is that those numbers are false. The $131 million figure was actually expenses for the Women's World Cup, not revenue. Forbes assistant managing editor Mike, I don't care, read a chart wrong and then told his readers bluntly that pay disparity is justified. He has since removed his erroneous article, but the misinformation has already spread far and wide. There was no retraction, by the way. That fake $131 million figure has been used to justify paying the women pennies on the dollar in the Chicago Tribune, the Baltimore Sun, Fox Sports, and others. It's been cited in ESPN, the Washington Post, and more. The link to the now retracted Forbes article has been shared over and over on social media, mostly by people arguing that women should not be paid more. It was even used by U.S. Soccer in the already misleading sideshow from lobbyists in Congress. I'm just reading this article. I need to find out that the $131 million. Oh, that's a Wall Street article. Come to the end of my free articles. So much for the Wall Street Journal. So anyway, that's the
but we don't. But that doesn't
on.
mean that the number that they brought in was more. For all we know, it's less than that.
It was actually less. It was substantially less. Though they didn't make money. Their expenses exceeded their revenue dramatically. I mean, it was very dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway.
So if this was a business, under normal circumstances, we would just cancel it.
Yeah, you'd probably take it into Chapter 11 and look at reorganization possibilities. And then when you saw how dismal the situation was, you'd go ahead and 7 it out and get the assets divvied up.
Sounds like a good opportunity for some money laundering, honestly.
Yeah.
You can find a way to do it. Just wealthy benefactors give money to them, and then the women on the team give a bunch of money to their favorite politicians. Just do it like that Bankman-Fried guy.
Do you know how easy it is to launder money? Seriously? I mean,
well, if you've got art, certain types of things make it really easy to launder money.
I can launder money without any of that stuff. People say, well, you need a vending business, lots of cash right there. You don't need any of that stuff.
That's a way to do it.
That is a way to do it. And it's kind of the old school way to do it. But the modern way to do it, it's 4 phone numbers. Okay. There's a bank in probably Azerbaijan and a bank in China, and to a bank in Canada, back to a bank in the USA. And you can have those funds chase each other, and they will never find it. They will never find where those things went to dummy. And you just set up shell corporations to pass that money around and then shut them down. If you have a large enough sum of money, it justifies the cost. I'm not saying it's a good idea, and the Zoo does not endorse money laundering. But it's simple to do. An idiot can do it. Idiots do it. And they do it successfully.
Yeah.
It's unusually caught money laundering. When was the last time you saw somebody prosecuted for money laundering?
Well, I told you the story about the guy who used to cut my hair. He had like this sort of salon thing, and the guy'd pay him $39 to cut my hair. And,
okay.
And all these guys would show up, and he hired these 2 cute little girls in little lab coats that would do stuff in the back room. And I asked what they were doing, and he said, they do whatever aesthetician sorts of things. Like, oh, that's fine. And so one day I show up to get my hair cut, because I would get my hair cut every 4 weeks, right on the dot. And there was police tape in front of the place and a big sign, and it turned out that he was doing money laundering and prostitution. But since I'm so naive with my bright, sunny outlook on life, And I'm so blind with my glasses off, I literally and figuratively didn't see it happening. But yeah, they went after him. So he opened another salon a few years later after he got out of jail, and gave it exactly the same name, which I thought was kind of ballsy.
That's kind of in your face, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And then he actually sent me a text message letting me know that he was in business at his new location and saying, "Come on down." Yeah, I don't really want to be associated financially or proximity-wise with any of what was going on at that place.
Yeah, no, yeah, make tracks out of there. But
yeah.
You know, one of the things that I've always been interested in, I know you have to be careful about talking about yourself, but I'm fascinated to know how you got interested in computers in the first place.
How did I get interested in computers? Well, I can tell you
you were there.
Well, yeah, I can tell you this. My interest isn't necessarily in computers. They're just an easy way to make a lot of money that isn't terrible. You know, nobody's shooting at you. There's not a lot of heavy lifting.
That's so funny. That was exactly my take on it.
It's pretty cushy in some ways, right?
And most of it's pretty easy.
Most of it is pretty easy, but I can tell you that I was really interested in audio.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was very, very young, I started playing around with audio stuff. Mm-hmm. And even when I had a TRS-80, I was trying to breadboard a analog to digital converter. And I started writing software to do sound analysis. Briefly in high school, I had a small business where I was designing speaker systems for people. And I had a friend whose father was a master woodworker. And so he would do all the production of the cabinets, and I would pick out all the drivers and the electronics and the crossovers. And that was good fun. But with the custom software that I wrote and a few microphones, and I could show up somewhere. And one of the things that I enjoyed doing was taking old speakers, vintage speakers that were broken, and then fixing them. Yeah. So there was this one thing, they had like these Klipsch speakers, and they were foobarred. And they couldn't quite figure out why. So I found the part that was broken, but since we didn't have the internet where you could just look everything up, I had to find a compatible driver. So I used my homemade system, which wasn't $20,000 of the audio, to figure out what the response curve of that missing piece was. And then I found a piece that matched it and then charged these people. And, if you're a high school student, mm-hmm. and you're charging people hundreds of bucks to fix their fancy computer speaker systems. Yeah, it is kind of habit forming. And then I got into a lot of the other stuff. Was just sort of it was sort of a combination of my interests in certain types of subjects, mm-hmm. Combined with just some happy accidents that accelerated me more in one direction than another.
Just happenstance and the flow of life.
Computers are great tools.
Oh, they are.
I would do like experiments and stuff and physics, and then I would just use APL to crunch the numbers.
Good lad. Write the entire program on a line of code.
I liked all of anything basically science and math except for what I call squishy science. I was never particularly fond of anything where they had to sketch something I looked at through a microscope. If you asked me to start drawing pictures of cells and vacuoles and cilia, It's like, no, I don't want anything to do with that.
You don't like the wet science. You're good with the physics and the chemistry, though.
Yeah. Chemistry is okay. Physics is better.
Mm-hmm. Physics, you don't potentially get hurt. You don't lose your senses of smell.
I don't know. Some poorly maintained many 1,000-volt power supplies. I got a pretty good jolt off of a few of those once or twice.
I'm not saying without hazards. Very definitely, being around big server farms and computer equipment. A small power supply to a PC can kill you very efficiently. So,
yeah.
Don't.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Be careful with electric potential.
But I mean, computers are interesting, but I don't know. They're kind of dumb. It's sort of like you used to be able to work on your own car, and you could take, the average person in their garage could take a car apart, put it back together, everything was fine. And those days are kind of over. And in a lot of ways, computers are not as much fun as they used to be.
Well, that's true. One of the interesting things that has happened that I've noticed, printing's kind of over.
Kind of, yeah.
People are not exchanging documents anything like they used to. And I mean, they are exchanging documents, but physical documents printed on paper, that's old hat. Eventually, when the legal folk come along, medicine seems to be farther ahead in modernizing and use of computers to store line data.
That's because they're offshoring and outsourcing large parts of it. You can't do that on physical paper.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to assume that your radiologist who looks at your tests isn't in Bangalore, because he probably is.
Probably is. Absolutely.
And the person doing the coding for the medical billing is probably in the Philippines. So they have a strong incentive to deal with that. Also, the amount of stuff that they have and the data retention requirements are pretty arduous. Doing it in paper is impractical.
Exactly. Paper was a limiting thing. I do have to tell you, though, that after going through 4 years at Northwestern, typing all my term papers, including an 80-page senior thesis, on a Royal manual typewriter. Think about that for a minute. I mean, your hands just have to be physically strong to do that. My hands were always sore right after finals, because that's when I typed all my papers. And in some cases wrote all my papers. But anyway, when I printed out my master's thesis in 1985, spring of 1985, I remember when I was all set up at the Okidata 82A, dot matrix, 9-pin dot matrix printer.
Yeah, I had an NECP6.
Same kind of deal. I was actually an NEC dealer for a while. Anyway, I've got my computer that I built, every single piece of it myself. I mean, every single piece of the circuit board I put together, the components at the component level on it, the disk drives. I've got 3 floppy drives in it. One of them is hard sector that I manually. It's hard to explain the difference between hard and soft sectors, floppy disks. So I'll leave that to the interested student. Anyway, make a long story short, I inserted the floppy drive with WordStar on it. I called up my file that I had finally saved, and it's satisfactorily spell checked with this amazing WordStar software, and hit Control KP to print it, and it began to print. And when I saw my thesis come out of that printer just perfectly, every word, every letter perfect, in that perfect data font that the Okidata's had, it was a magic moment. That was a magical moment for me.
Because typing sucks on a typewriter. You can put the correcting ribbon thing in, and it's like, yeah, that's great, but it's terrible.
It sucks out loud.
I hate typing. I hate every part of it. I have some custom mechanical keyboards I've put together.
Yeah.
And in the custom mechanical keyboard community, there are all these things that people get interested in or worked up about, depending on your perspective. So you put these mechanical switches in, and they have different weights on terms of the springs. And you hear some of these people talk about the difference between 68 gram springs and 62 gram springs, or 50 something gram springs. And they're like, my hands get too tired when I try to type on those heavy springs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much the difference in force is between your old typewriter that you typed all that stuff on?
Oh my goodness.
Or even an ADM3A terminal and a 68 gram
It's
spring?
probably an order of magnitude.
68
Seriously.
grams, it's like lifting, a few raisins on your fingertip. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
Exactly.
Are you so weak that typing on 68 gram springs wears you out? Do you think you're gonna Hulk out? You're gonna be like some kind of roid monster with big old fat muscular fingers, like a professional wrestler with big sausage fingers from getting all
2 ounces of pressure.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's
nothing.
nothing. And I look at that kind of stuff and I'm just like, okay, just shut up. Just invoke the rule. Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said by me now? Because I get okay boomered enough without telling people, when I was a kid, the keys used to be 10 times as hard to push as these. You guys are weak.
That's kind of what I'm doing here, though.
Yeah. But it's not me going and looking to pick a fight with somebody, because they're very serious. They're talking about, oh, my precious little fingies just, they have to have the slightly weaker springs. Otherwise, they get really tired when I try to type too much. It's like you're the same person that can pick up a game controller and play for 3 or 4 hours. Yeah.
Just looking for something to talk about.
Yeah, just looking for reasons to complain about stuff. I stopped being impressed by new computers a while ago. They sort of reached a point where they were useful and responsive enough, and now I sort of kind of don't care. If somebody said, here's a computer that's 4 times faster, I'd be like, okay. Unless I needed to replace the current one that I've got, I don't think I would care.
Yeah.
It's just not something that's on my radar. I hardly ever wake up and think, oh, this computer's too slow.
Oh, no. Well, bottlenecks traverse the chain. Right now, I think the workstation's speed and functionality for what most people need is absolutely fine.
Mm-hmm.
The problem people have is with the quality of their internet service. That's the biggest problem, right? That's the biggest area that needs to improve just around the world.
Well, I think once VR gets fixed to the point where you no longer want to start throwing up after 20 minutes. Obviously, some people can stand it longer, but once they really start to fix VR and make it into something that's a lot more pleasant to use, the requirements for graphics speed and networks are going to go way up. And that'll push a whole new wave of development.
Yep.
Right now, it's just sort of, if you can watch a streaming movie in 4K, and you can get fairly low latency when you're trying to video game in a multiplayer setting, that's good enough.
It's interesting to think about the market reacting to a whole lot of people wanting to take advantage of a virtual reality.
Sorry, was I saying AI when I meant to say VR? I apologize.
No. You said VR.
Okay, good. Sorry. Go on.
What did I say? AI?
No, I just I'm tired. I've been busy metaphorically punching this guy in the dick all day. So
You're punched out. All right.
Sorry. Go ahead. VR.
Yeah. Sorry, my mic just fell over. Mic stand is on a mouse pad. It's complicated. Sorry. Anyway, nothing but the highest quality standards here. Menus. VR. When they get VR fixed and people want to take more advantage of VR and the resulting, request for service, the load on the service providers is going to go up dramatically, because that's yeah, if that happens, and that happens suddenly, if that wave crashes quickly and is large, there might be a long time where they will have to react to that. There might be a lag in them reacting to that. It might be slow for a while.
Mm.
And I mean that's kind of almost not saying anything. What I mean is that the speed with which that demand could develop may catch them unawares is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this stuff, well, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that's going to happen. Most of it's probably not generally interesting. A lot of the AI stuff, I think, is still kind of overblown. It's really just a software methodology for the most part. And people,
when you say software methodology, what?
Well, all software is basically bootstrapped by the software that came before it, right? So somebody builds a compiler, and then they use that to build a thing that makes a preprocessor, and then that loops back into the compiler, and then you get next generations of compilers. And then you get to the current day where there's all these frameworks which you can use so that you don't have to know a lot about the basics of programming. You just have to understand how a framework works. And then you can build amazing things. Right. You build video games, you build all these things. A lot of the AI stuff is built on top of these frameworks that some very clever people have put together. So there's a lot of people who work in AI but don't really understand AI, if you know what I mean.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
You know, so a lot of this stuff is interesting enough, but it's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm much more of a low level sort of person. I have a book. It's over there. It's by Gilbert Strang, who's like everybody. It's sort of the canonical linear algebra teacher, and it's all about machine learning and linear algebra. And he goes in and explains a lot of how this sort of stuff works. So when people say, why is Elon's car trying to kill black people in crosswalks? I actually understand why that might be an issue. Because it isn't about some big AI framework. It's about how you teach systems to recognize patterns in what essentially is a big matrix of data.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting book. You'd probably get a kick out of it.
What linear algebra and its applications?
It's like linear algebra and machine learning by Gilbert Strang. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good book.
I would like to check it out. Linear algebra was that's a fun course.
It is. It's like the first real math course that most people take. And by real, I mean not just doing computations, but actually sort of understanding the theory. Because geometry is also pure math, but it just doesn't work. You don't understand it in your brain quite the same way, because you can fall back on sort of a built-in understanding of the way the world is kind of shaped.
Right. Well, you have analogous shapes.
And you can't do that in linear algebra. No, you have to actually sort of go, okay, well, here's the rules. If you follow the rules, what are the implications of it? And it's like
this matrix times this matrix.
It's a good thing for people to learn, even if you don't use it professionally. It's really good for your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's a good thing. But anyway, that's not the point.
I consider linear algebra the cutoff for minimal math education. All students should have to pass linear algebra or be euthanized, I think.
Well, I talked to somebody, I don't know, 30 years ago. No, it was like 25 years ago. And she actually got a math degree from San Jose State University.
Well, that's a good
and she said, I was in math. And I said, well, what did you do your final work on? Oh, I took differential equations in linear algebra. I said, well, what kind of differential equations? And then I found out it was ordinary differential equations. And I'm just sitting here going, don't tell her that's what you completed before you graduated high school. She got a degree, an actual Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics.
Stuff that you were doing in the 9th grade.
Well, 12th grade, but yeah.
Yeah, the principle holds.
The principle still holds. It's like, you can get a degree for that?
Who do I send off to for my degree?
Yeah, it's like you didn't get tortured by your college linear algebra teacher. You didn't have to deal with real analysis 1A. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. That's not important to anybody but me.
No, that's an interesting thing though. You when you got to college, I mean, you were basically, from what I can tell, a year to 2 years into a math major.
Oh yeah.
And
econ and several other things.
Well, yeah. I know about your prodigious mind, but
it's not meant to be a flex. It's just it's the way it was.
Sticking to the math for a moment. Did they have a CLEP system where you could test out stuff and not have to take, integral calculus over again?
Oh, I had college credits.
You actually had the paper. Oh,
I had the paper.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
so there was no issue for me.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, that was fine. I had all that stuff. No, I stupidly decided that as soon as I was legally able to go to junior college, which was the summer after my sophomore year, I immediately started taking classes. So summer after my sophomore year, I took college algebra and trigonometry. And then so I started taking calculus at the beginning of my junior year. So did all that, and then linear algebra, ordinary differential equations was the last part. But I also took like a full load. I took a full load at college and a full load at high school.
Yep.
And that was dumb because I did get diagnosed with exhaustion a couple times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good times.
Go till you fall down, I think.
Well, it was stupid of me because I sort of knew that it was a dumb idea and I should have just taken the GED. But a bunch of people convinced me, and see, I'm still bitter about it, just like sixth grade camp. They convinced me that I was going to miss out on some social development or something. And I loved junior college and I hated high school. So mostly I just tortured myself for no reason. I mean, literally no reason for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody who is serious about learning stuff to just get out of American high schools as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
Find yourself a good junior college and try to be as much of an adult as possible.
When I was in high school, I had taken all the courses that the high school offered that I wanted to take, and had, was way, way ahead of the class. Not like you were, but I was still substantially ahead of everybody else. And I got accepted into a program senior year to take courses down at Catholic University, and that was one of the most enjoyable things I did. I took biology and physics. It was really great stuff. It was so much of an improvement over high school. Oh my God.
Well, high school was just dumb. Like I told you about the high school field trip where I had an opportunity to go listen to Carl Sagan talk about the data from the space probes and talk about all this stuff. And I was told that I had to stay with the group and go look at the rats in the centrifuge. So I sort of viewed high school as being nothing but something that got in the way of me doing the things I wanted to do. So I'm just very, very driven and very narrowly focused when I'm interested in something. Yeah. If I get interested in something, I'll just blow off everything and spend the day learning about it.
Nothing wrong with that.
So
that's behavior I would encourage.
Well, I read a book on how to build your own power generator, especially windmill. Yeah. Turns out that the brake rotors on a Volvo are particularly good to wind coil around. They're just the right size. There's things you can do with
you're
the
already
propellers.
Building the infrastructure back up. You're thinking about building the power plants and getting them going again.
Well, there was
1930.
Do you know the case about this? There was this guy in Africa who actually built his own windmill power rig. And the whole story of how this guy built this thing is amazing because this guy was obviously a clever son of a bitch and resourceful. He put this thing together out of nothing, and the way he improvised the parts he couldn't get. It's a whole fascinating story, and I'm not really doing it.
What's the guy's name?
Doing it. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's been a decade or two since I first heard about this. But there's a whole story about it. We should probably dig it up for like a Saturday.
Yeah.
About this guy in Africa. And it's like, and you look at a guy like that and go, holy crap, somebody give this guy a full ride to a university.
Mm-hmm.
Just make it happen, because he did so much with so little. And just because he was driven and worked hard and applied himself and had a sharp mind, he did this amazing thing. He built a windmill that produced power for his village out of trash.
His name was Maxwell. His name was William. Saves his town from famine by constructing a windmill to provide free water and electricity. Is that it?
That sounds about right.
Yep. It's The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind is actually based on a remarkable true story, bringing a wider audience into William Kamkwamba's incredible journey of innovation.
A.K.A. Bill Shemp.
Yeah. The Netflix's The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind is a true story, it turns out.
Oh, wait, it's on Netflix? So they didn't have to make him black. He just started out that way. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, the guy's name, the actual guy's name is William Kamkwamba, and who I'm going to call Bill. And Bill was born in 1987. He's from Malawi. He's an inventor, an engineer, and author. He gained renown in his country in 2001 when he built a wind turbine to power multiple electrical appliances in his family's house in Wimby, 23 kilometers east of Kasungu, for those of you who are familiar with the region, using blue gum trees, bicycle parts, and materials collected in a local scrapyard. Since then, he has built a solar-powered water pump that supplies the first drinking water in his village, and 2 other wind turbines, the tallest standing 12 meters, 39 feet, and is planning 2 more, including one in Longwe, the political capital of Malawi. So, and I'm going to call up, here is one of them, and I'm going to share this out here. So, old boomer sharing.
Yeah. I wonder how this guy would feel about, these springs are too hard for my widow hands.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm looking at the chat. Harry backed the Lingerie Football League. Yes, let's go with that.
So there you can see it.
All that matters is whether it produces power or not.
That is one of the ones that he built just with scrap shit.
And he was young when he did this too.
And he was a kid when he did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He was. He was like 12 or 14 or something, and he's out there, gathering up stuff like that. That was amazing. Here's. I hope that came through. Yeah, here's another one that he built. I think that's the second one that he built. What a stud!
Yeah,
and there's the great man right there on the left.
Good job, Bill.
Everybody, be like Bill.
Everybody, be glad that you weren't born in some of the worst parts of Africa. For fuck's sake. That's all the admission of privilege you're going to get out of me. I'm glad I was not born in another time in the past where things were dumb, or in some or in some shithole country.
What's it?
Because life is not fair. Life is totally not fair. And if you try to make it fair, all you're really doing is making it terrible for everybody.
Yeah. No,
so the sooner people get over the fact that life is not fair, the happier they're going to be.
Well, that's an interesting thing, Harry. What do you think about this drive toward equity or equality of outcome?
I think that any government with the power to do it will end up being terrible.
I agree. I think you're looking at a government that wants to essentially not enslave its citizens, but to so closely constrain their behavior as to really affect both the quality of life and effectively they will want more and more control over time, and as they get more control, they'll want more control, it will always ratchet up in bad times. Government control will ratchet up in bad times because people want to be taken care of. I don't know what to do about that. I'm really concerned about that, and there are a lot of weak thinking people. And in my grimmest moments, I think, well, this is, the machine is becoming aware, and the machine is actually aware it's ready to take over from humans, and so it's breeding humans who just want to sit around and complain that people don't recognize their pronouns and stay high and game, don't have babies, and wait for death. And that's perfectly acceptable to the machine because the machine is now capable of living without us, apparently, it may think. That's what I think is going on.
Yeah. Do you think that it was an early AI that came up with that phrase? What is it? A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Do you think this is just the machine's way of doing us in?
Yeah, well, it changed the last two nouns from computer and human. Like a computer needs a human.
No, all kidding aside. Excuse me. The people keep thinking of AI, I think, in ways that don't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it's fun to sort of look at it like a science fiction thing, like it's going to be Cyclops or from that movie,
right,
where it just takes over and tries to protect us all from ourselves.
Right.
The problem is that humans are not really rational. We can use rationality. The thing is, the things that drive humans are not rational. No, we have all of these very basic drives that have to be satisfied.
Yeah.
And then we use rational thought as a tool to achieve those ends, but the underlying goals are not rational.
Agreed.
Now, if you take some sort of AI, people keep thinking that the AI is going to function like a human does, but it's not going to have any of those underlying drives. Most people are so used to sort of being themselves, being what they are, that I think they have trouble imagining what a pure AI type intellect would actually be like. And we keep trying to think, well, if I was an AI, what would I do? And that is not a useful way of looking at it at all.
No,
because that is totally not the way that is not the way AI works.
No, not at all.
It's just going to get really smart and then try to take over, and then it's going to make us its pets. We're just going to be, no, that's totally not what's going to happen, because an AI doesn't have that kind of drive.
What I think you're getting to is, with AIs, it's what's my motivation? Why would an AI want anything? What would an AI want? Why would it want it? Self-preservation? Why would it want that? Has it been programmed for that? If not, no.
No. It doesn't care if its genes survive. It doesn't have self-preservation.
Bingo.
It doesn't have the need to affect the world around it to sort of prove to itself that it exists. It doesn't have any of these sort of human drives. Yeah. It doesn't worry about its mortality. It just none of these underlying human it doesn't get hungry the way we do. It doesn't get hungry, it doesn't get horny. It doesn't feel insecure. It doesn't have any of those things. So because
it doesn't get cold and it doesn't fear death.
Exactly. So it's not even going to be Commander Data, where he's just sort of wondering, hey, Captain Picard, can you explain this human emotion to me? There, Data, meet me in my ready room, and I'll tell you about a story about a boy called Pinocchio. And it's just, none of that is going to happen.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. As usual, the reality is much more prosaic than fiction.
What AI is a system by which you can have a computer find patterns and structures in very large sets of data that are not obvious to the human being.
Right.
Now, you can take a human being, take a bunch of them, smart bastards that we are. We want to impress the female of the species so we can reproduce. We want to impress our friends. We want all of those things to happen, right? So you get a bunch of really smart guys in a room and you start the in vino es veritas flowing and to get those creative juices going, and they will come up with amazing ideas. But if you throw millions and millions and millions of points of data, just a sea of data, no human being is going to discern the pattern. You're not going to Rain Man your way into finding the pattern in this sea of data. So a human will look at a problem, break it down, and figure out, come up with like a hypothesis as to what might be going on. The machine doesn't care what's going on. All it cares about is finding the pattern within the data. The more data you feed it, the more likely it is to find the pattern. Does that pattern reflect reality? No. All that pattern does is explain the data that's been given.
Yeah.
The machine doesn't give a shit. AI does not care. It doesn't care about the meaning of it. It doesn't care about what the actual underlying mechanism is. It has no reason to care
and no mechanism to care.
Its whole purpose is to just sift through data that no human being would have the time, patience, or lifespan to go through.
Exactly right.
And that's what an AI does. And then, hopefully some human will then take that data and go, hadn't noticed that relationship between these things, and then take that and then jump ahead to some new thing. But in terms of just going through mountains and mountains of data, yeah, computers are better at it than humans. News at 11. Nothing, that's not really changing much of anything.
And as I found out with my printer, it's much more fun to see it come out of a printer and stand there while you're not doing anything, as opposed to somebody who had been accustomed to typing papers, typing the paper, and it comes out letter by letter. And occasionally you have to correct it. And like you said, it's a mechanical correction with a slip of paper that has this white pasty stuff on it. And you hit the same letter and it makes it white again. Then you can hit the correct letter. That's what backspace, that's what the backspace key does. It's almost impossible to explain to people what it was like to type a term paper on a manual typewriter.
Well, most people don't realize that carriage return and line feed are two different characters.
Yeah, no kidding. Control J and Control M.
But
exactly right.
It used to be that in order to make something like a newspaper, suppose you just want to print a newspaper, right? Black and white.
Yep.
In order to do that, you go, how do the pictures get printed in the newspaper? Well, you have to basically create something called a halftone, which creates dots of different sizes. And saturations, and that gives you something that from a distance looks like a black and white image. And the process by which you take a photograph, turn it into a halftone, and then cut and paste it physically onto a sheet of paper to make a proof.
Yes.
When you do that, you actually tear the paper. You don't cut it, you tear it so that it has an edge of variable thickness so that you can then glue it down and have it have less of a discernible border to it. There's a way in which you tear the paper and put it down. There's a lot of art and craft to a lot of old school sorts of stuff. Yeah.
I did not know that they tore them. I may have known that. I think I remember knowing that at one time.
Yeah, you have to sort of tear it in a very specific way. Now, humans are really good at this sort of stuff, but computers make it so, you want another copy of that? Here, let me press this button again. Print, and then it prints out another copy of your paper.
See, that was the thing.
Here, Dad, I made a copy for you.
And that's exactly what I did. Was I printed it out again so I could have a copy just because I could.
Yeah.
I didn't need one. I was going to take that copy and drive it to school and hand it in. But yeah.
But it's just the smart thing to do.
That was 1985, by the way.
Yeah.
It was 1985.
Well, in 1985, one of the things I did to make money was I got a gig doing consulting for restaurants. And what I would do is I would go in and sit down and sort of do the secret shopper thing and kind of sit by myself and see what was going on. And then I'd come back the next day in a suit and a tie, and I would, and this is me when I'm, still very young, and I would observe the way they would work, and I would then come back a day later. I'd usually do this over like a long weekend, and I would come up and I would give them a system to make their operations more efficient, and it would be in a binder, and I would print it out in like the hotel room that I would rent near the place.
Yeah.
And so I would just show up and I would do this 3-day thing. So I'd basically eat in the restaurant, go back, gather a bunch of data, interview people, and then I would come up with a system overnight, and I would print it out and hand it to them in a series of binders, and then I would have them send me money. And that's how I made money on the side, is just optimizing the shit out of other people's restaurants.
That's an awesome side hustle.
Well, it was just if I found a way I could make something less shitty, I would just do it. So, fixing speakers or optimizing, restaurants. And I usually was looking at mostly front of the house type of operations. You wouldn't really go into the kitchen per se, but it was everything except that, because you don't want to step on the kitchen manager's toes.
No.
And they have their own processes, which are too domain specific to whatever the restaurant's trying to serve. But every other aspect of it was good. And a lot of times people knew that their systems were broken, but if you try to have somebody in-house do it, it just causes too much hostility. Having some evil consultant come in that you can just blame when things go ways that they don't like them to. You just go, well, just blame Harry. His fault. You paid him money, he came in and did it. Because you almost can't fix stuff like that from within because there's too much resentment.
I have no experience with that environment.
I just sort of fell into it. I did it once because it interested me and it was a problem that needed to be solved, and then people started offering me money to go and do it.
Yeah, that's it's as soon as you prove yourself effective, it's just it's just a different world completely.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should say hello to chat as long as we're going about it. I see that Costin's here, Cannibalistic Wizard is here, Hate Camel, Addie's here. Hi, Addie. K Shoal and Green Badger is here. Badger. And that looks like the bunch of us. Did I say Hate Camel? Hate Camel is here. And great fun. Austin, what if I prefer blaming Skep Tock over the Harry channel? Here we give you a choice of blame targets. So
there's so much blame to go around. Why not blame both?
It's exactly why
limit yourself to just one?
Just my God, everyone else is blaming me for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I feel.
What have I learned over the years? Don't listen to other people when you're pretty sure that you're right and they're wrong. And don't be afraid to take the blame for stuff. Being blamed for stuff is not that big a deal. Too many people make even bigger mistakes trying to avoid the blame. God, I have no patience for people who won't admit their mistakes.
Try and lie their way out of.
Yeah. Oh God, I told you I dropped a Bowflex on my face. How much more of a confession of being stupid do you people need from me?
Well, that's not being stupid.
Oh, it was pretty stupid. It was. I had an idea and I completely forgot to think it through, and then before you realize it, I had a Bowflex fall on my face. It was pretty dumb.
I've done some dumb things too, so
yeah.
I've nothing to comment about that. In fact, I've probably done more dumb things than everybody who's listening to this podcast. But
we've got chat. That's good.
I'm one who has to find out by trial and error. So I've had to make a lot of mistakes in my life. That's how I find things out. Is I'm not smart enough to get it right the first time, so I have to make a mistake and then they go back. I'm really good on the second attempt.
Well, I think I told you I learned a lot. One of the first jobs I had where I was an employee, the guy who was running the business had a cocaine habit. And watching him run a business into the ground was much more instructive than watching it work.
Oh wow, yeah.
Man, you learn a lot from your being close to a business failure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not recommending
about
it.
This subject when we're offline.
Yeah, I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying that if you have an opportunity to learn from somebody else's mistake, you definitely should do it.
Oh yeah.
And if you screw something up and you think it's instructive to other people to let them know, then you probably kind of got to pay it forward and admit to your mistake. So yeah, I've done a lot of stupid things, and I'm pretty happy admitting to most of them.
Exactly. And
yeah.
The thing about admitting your mistakes, it makes you seem more honest. This is really helpful for your next long con.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you have the credibility from apparently being, oh, that's not what you're doing, is it?
Mm-hmm.
No, I just can't. My impulse control has been so poor over the years. That's what really got me into trouble. That's where I made my biggest mistakes. Things that had some really big learning opportunities as a result of that.
Yeah, most of the mistakes that I've made along those lines are of the form, I let fear and doubt and uncertainty prevent me from doing something I should have done.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. It's really hard to...
that's a terrible trap.
Well, it's really hard. If you have good people around you, it sure helps. But if you're kind of going it alone, and it's just you against the freaking universe, that just wears you down. Yes. And so it's totally human to screw up often and periodically.
It absolutely.
So you got to cut yourself some slack, because it's impossible to get all the things right. And if that's the standard you set for yourself, you're just going to be a very unhappy person.
Bingo.
Yeah. And I don't want to be an unhappy person. I mean, I still manage, but to be unhappy, but I don't want to be unhappy. I don't get off on being miserable. There are some people that are like that, and you just go, God, you are such an annoying piece of shit to be around. I just... I mean, you know the kind of people I'm talking about, the people that just sort of thrive on being miserable. And it's like, why?
I have actually managed, and it's a little easier when you get older to do this, maybe, but I have managed to weed most of those people out of my life. I really don't have time, especially at this time in my life, for anybody who is, like you say, professionally miserable. Somebody who just never gets better, always has something to complain about.
Well, what about the light version? There's the light version of this, which is, and I've known several people like that are always slightly disappointed. They're not miserable. I've known a few people like this, that it doesn't matter what it is, they're always just slightly disappointed.
A slight touch of dour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, no, I'm fine.
Yeah. Exactly.
What's wrong? Nothing.
Yeah, it's fine. Just let it go.
Yeah, it's probably just cancer.
So I sent you 2 links. Do you want to talk about that kind of crap, or do you want to just or do you want to just table it for another night? It's whatever entertains you, because we don't have to do anything. But chat might be amused by it.
The one that I thought, the Philadelphia story, so to speak, to coin a phrase, is amazing. Do you want to take this? The Philadelphia City Council is approving a permanent 10 p.m. curfew.
Okay, so the part I didn't quite follow was whether this was for only minors or whether it was for everybody. Because the latter would be like
it's
martial
17
law.
years old or younger in Philadelphia right now.
Yeah.
17 years old and younger. That's the only curfew they have to be home by 10 p.m. That was the bill that they passed on Thursday. And now they're thinking about making it a permanent bill. And there are a few exceptions, including if the teenager is with the parent or going to or from work, or that kind of thing.
So if the government thinks their reason for being out is virtuous, then they will give them permission.
You read my mind.
Well, I had this friend growing up, and his family was very kind of weirdly Pennsylvania Dutch in a lot of ways.
Uh-huh.
And I famously remember his mom saying in all seriousness, when are you going to be home, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, because remember, nothing good ever happens after 9 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. It's like,
I don't know what.
It's like, what are you going to do to these? I mean, okay, so these kids, speaking of making their own mistakes, how in the hell are they ever going to learn anything?
All right. Well,
if you just wrap them in bubble wrap like this, but go on.
Let's try and give these guys.
The state's going to be a much better parent than their actual parents. Go on.
That's essentially what they're saying. The legislation's aim is preventative versus punitive. When a kid gets picked up for violating curfew, the first step is to try and reunify them with their family. If that's unable to happen, then we'll take them to a community resource evening center if they are close. If not, they go to the police district. The bill includes expanded curfew centers hours, which will stay open through 2 a.m. So you can go to a curfew center. If you have no place to go or don't feel comfortable or you're scared, whatever, those are open to 2 a.m. And reporting from police, Philadelphia police, on its enforcement. Anyway, a young person can show their ID. Not many young people have an ID card, Gilmore Richardson said, so they have a school ID card. But retired, anyway, they basically said, we can't just stop anyone for any reason anymore. One of the policemen said, how are we going to determine a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old? If a 20-year-old looks like a 15-year-old, officers are going to hesitate because this is another chance for them to get in trouble. And it still has to be signed by the mayor. And the mayor is currently looking at the legislation and what they want to do, apparently some of the people on the city council in Philadelphia want to do is they want to make this curfew permanent. And then I guess once they made it permanent, they could extend the age range, perhaps. Maybe 19 and younger, 20 and younger, 21 and younger, 25 and younger. Really, by the time they're 30 and younger. And that'll just make it everybody.
Yeah.
It's going to be, and that's the way you make Philadelphia look like Pyongyang.
Unless the party gives you a special pass.
Right. Exactly right.
Because everybody loves a hall monitor.
Well, yeah.
They've got a whistle and an armband, and they can give you, little citations. Send you back to class.
Those are the best people in government, Harry.
Those are the best people in government.
They're the ones with the most profound sense of integrity, the ones who with a can-do spirit, who are innovators and pioneers.
Somebody with no self-worth who's just a little too qualified to work for TSA. Basically, is going to be who's going to be in charge of that.
Exactly right. I mean, TSA is homeless guys with guns. Let's face it. But the step up from that is not great.
No.
So, anyway, it's hard for me to hear. The only thing that I sort of like about this is it's a local ordinance. It's a city ordinance. And if a city wants to make a decision like that, that's the level at which that decision should be made. They've got a problem in Philadelphia with crime. It's not a crime. It's not the problem with crime in Midlothian, Texas, is not near as bad as Philadelphia. So Philadelphia should make its own decision. If they think that that's the best thing to do, that's good. Now, as a libertarian, I have a huge problem with the state saying, you know, your First Amendment rights end at 10 p.m. Fuck you.
Yeah, freedom of association is one of those rights, and you can't freely associate with people if you're prevented from moving.
Bingo.
So I would like to see this thing shot down.
Yeah, well, this is bullshit. But my saving grace is at least it's being done at the city level. At least there's not a mad Pennsylvania governor like that idiot in Michigan.
It's not like Whitmer,
yeah, the lady governor in Michigan, bringing down her autocratic bullshit, curtailing people's rights. It's all for the children. We do it all for the children. We're taking away your money and your bread and your bank account for the children and your car. You can't own a car.
I'm somewhat reluctant to make remarks based on somebody's appearance, and I don't usually do it. But okay, but
and we know how butt works.
But that woman wears an annoying amount of makeup. She must have pores the size of the Grand Canyon, because she's plastered so much stuff on that she looks like Odo from season 1 of Deep Space Nine.
Who are you talking about?
Whitmer.
Oh, Whitmer. Oh,
she wears a lot of makeup. It's like there's makeup that women put on to not be shiny on TV, and men wear makeup on TV too. I mean, to be fair, sure. In the world of 4K, a little insecurity, you want to address it, that's fine.
Makeup,
but she's
spackle, no.
But she's got like the full Tammy Faye Baker thing going on, and she's added so much makeup to cover up whatever's going on. Again, if she didn't wear the makeup and she just looked the way she did, her skin wasn't evenly colored, I wouldn't say a damn word, because we're all human. We all have our little faults, right? And that would be none of my business. But she's applying all this makeup with a trowel. She's got so much makeup to make herself not look shiny that she looks shiny again.
Yes.
She's reshined. She's like like the human version of how you season a stainless steel pan. You put the stuff on and then you heat it, and then it fills in all the pores in the metal and leaves you with this frictionless surface. So she's turned her face into like a frictionless surface. Maybe she thinks all of the complaints about her will just slide right off. She's turned herself into a shiny, frictionless surface of cosmetics.
I actually think she's mentally ill. Have you ever seen her interviewed? She's a crazy lady. She's
got crazy eyes.
She's got crazy eyes, but I also think she's a monomaniac. I think she's just like Donald Trump.
Well, what about this the woman Hochul, who's the governor of New York, finally elected?
She's an unelected, time-serving, party apparatchik, as far as I can tell.
She won the election this last time. Wasn't she up for election and won? So she's not just completing Cuomo's term now. She's actually elected.
She's actually the gov.
Yeah.
She's may God have mercy on their souls.
But she doesn't have crazy eyes quite as badly as Whitmer does.
No, she is more of a well-meaning,
she's too dumb. The New York one, she's too dumb to know she's wrong.
Well,
Whitmer's just evil.
Whitmer's just evil, whereas I think Hochul actually does have a sense of responsibility about taking care of the state. I do think that there are some state matters that she has acted responsibly on.
Yeah.
And she has a sense of decency that Twitmer does not possess.
Well, I think what we can agree on is that that stupid but somewhat honest is better than evil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Whitmer is I think she's tipped her hand enough to have poisoned her chances. I hope. I would hate to see
she
her
won
in line
re-election
for that.
again too.
Well, that's Michigan. Michigan is a dead cinder of a state. Sorry, but that's just the way it is. Detroit elects everything in Michigan. It just does. And that Detroit, that liberal area down there, and the liberal area around Lansing also just control the electoral politics of that state.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Ann Arbor for 5 years of my life. It's that is the only place I've ever been that felt like Berkeley is in Ann Arbor. I've been in a myriad of college towns. I mean, I've been to Stony Brook. I expected Stony Brook to feel like that, and it didn't.
Berkeley is kind of an amazing city.
It is kind of an amazing city. Absolutely.
I mean, I kind of have a love-hate relationship toward Berkeley.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It has great restaurants in it. You gotta admit.
It has some of the best breakfast restaurants of any place I've ever been. You can get a damn good breakfast at a number of places in Berkeley. And especially as you get a little closer to the Oakland border. Oh God, some of the breakfast. I don't know what it is about Berkeley. Well, it is a town to eat breakfast in. I'll tell you, you can really get a good breakfast in Berkeley.
Do you know where the Denny's is in Emeryville? I'll bet you do. It's by that old Holiday Inn.
You're talking about down closer to the water?
Down by the water, exactly.
Well, yeah, I know that because it's on the way to Skates in Emeryville.
Yes.
Skates used to be one of my favorite restaurants, but it's not as good as it used to be.
Oh my God. I often wonder, in my professional life, how often, because I was down in, Alameda and that area and going all over the place. Had a long-term project in San Pablo over by the reservoir. I wonder how close we came again. I have a feeling we were probably at the pool at the same time.
Oh no, we figured that out. But I didn't go to Skates for the first time until 1986.
Remember, I started working with Viewstar in Alameda in 1995, and
well, by the time 95 rolled around,
and with them for the next 20 years. So
I was about to say something not true
all the time. Well, I was in and out of Alameda all the time. That's what I'm saying. And I was in that area all the time. I'm not talking about the 70s when I was in Monterey. I'm talking about the years when I was practically commuting to Alameda.
Well, our paths have probably crossed a bunch of times and we never realized it.
It's so funny.
What a small world.
It is. That sort of thing probably amuses me much more than it amuses our listeners, however. So
it's a bit niche.
It's a bit niche. Absolutely. Now, what was this other thing that you sent me from the Daily Skeptic?
Yeah.
It's the Oxford County Councilors to introduce trial climate lockdown. So these guys have actually found a way to control the climate.
Well, no, what they've done
the climate
is they've taken the city and divided it up into 6 regions in which basically your all the stuff within a region is no more than 15 minutes away from from anything else in the region. Okay. And so by what they're saying is that they're going to use license plate scanners to determine, and you're just going to have to register your car, and they're going to basically keep track of the number of times you leave your region to go to another region outside of your region or outside of town. And you're going to be limited to 100 of those per year as a means of forcing people to not travel so much to save the climate. And you were talking about local control making it better, and I'm still marveling at what the local councils are able to do in the UK, because their government sort of views that they can do anything they want to do unless they're expressly prohibited from it. And our government kind of works the other way.
With the other way around. Yeah.
And I like our government, as bad as it is, a lot better than the English government. These councils just can do seemingly anything. I mean, it's because to us, it's a fundamental right to be able to travel and associate and so on and so forth. But apparently there, it's like, no, for the good of the climate, you're just going to not travel so much. And this is our scheme for making sure that you don't travel too much. It's pretty terrible.
This is interesting. Oxfordshire County Council yesterday approved plans to lock residents into one of 6 zones to, quote, save the planet, end quote, from global warming. The latest stage in the, quote, 15-minute city, end quote, agenda is to place electronic gates on key roads in and out of the city, confining residents to their own neighborhoods once they have used their allotted trip. Okay.
You can ask for permission to do more. You can approach them and say, "Mother, may I?"
Yes. Okay.
And that certainly won't end in any kind of bribes or sexual favors, right?
No, that'll be fine.
That'll be fine.
Scheme, residents will be allowed to leave their zone. You may leave your zone. Citizen, you may leave your zone a maximum of 100 days per year. All other days, you will be confined to your zone. But in order to even gain this, every resident will have to register their car details with the council, who will then track their movements via smart cameras around the city, looking for violations of regulations. Oxfordshire County Council, which is run by Labour, the Liberal Democrats, and the Green Party, secretly decided to divide up the city of Oxford into 6 15-minute districts in 2021, soon after they were elected to office. None of the councillors declared their intention of imprisoning local residents in their manifestos, of course, preferring to make vague claims about how they will, quote, improve the environment, end quote, instead. Okay, so this sounds pretty salty, actually. The Daily Skeptic, and
they are, but there's a quote from one of them. Did you see? I don't know if that's in that article, where they basically said, "Well, this is something we're going to do, whether people want it or not."
Yeah, it's
because that's what I like in a government. That kind of confidence. That's pretty attractive in a politician. That confidence where they don't care what the governed think. We're just going to do it anyway for your own good.
Let's see. Roadblocks stopping most motorists from driving through Oxford city center will divide the city into 6 15-minute neighborhoods, the county council travel chief has said. And he insisted the controversial plan will go ahead whether people liked it or not. Duncan Enright, Oxfordshire County Council's cabinet member for travel and development strategy, explained the authority's traffic filter proposals in an interview in the Sunday Times. He said the filters would turn Oxford into a 15-minute city with local services within a small walking radius. People can drive freely around their own neighborhood and can apply for a permit to drive through the filters and into the other neighborhoods for up to 100 days per year. This equates to an average of 2 days per week. Are you kidding?
No.
Oxfordshire is the home of the University of Oxford, one of Britain's premier learning institutions. Well, yes. How about that?
What's that dating app for straight people where they hook up?
Oh, the swipe left, swipe right.
Yeah, because I know Grindr's the gay male thing, but what's the
hook up. What's the new?
Why can I not? Tinder.
Tinder.
Right.
That's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what they should do is they should also legislate that in their region, Tinder is only allowed to match you to people that are within walking distance of your house. So if you decide you want to hook up, you can't drive across the town to meet at a coffee shop and then go have a nice snog. You're only allowed to have sex with strangers within walking distance of your house.
Save the environment.
Save the environment. Save the environment. Shag an ugly chick or ugly dude. Just make do. Make do with what's. Just go foraging for sex in your local area. It'll be fine.
Foraging for sex. Yeah, Oxford dons out there.
Yeah.
Robes, school ties. Oh my god. Yeah, it's
What a brave new world we live in.
The guy concludes. He says, "I guess it was inevitable that an attempt would be made at some point to introduce Chinese-style movement restrictions on British people. It's the British people doing it to themselves. They elected these clowns. You know, if you elect somebody and they do something you don't like, you have a chance to fix that at the ballot box. If these guys want that, that's fine. The problem that I have here, it's the same problem I have with the Philadelphia problem, is if they put their curfew into place, they have just taken one of the largest cities in the United States and said to me that I am not allowed to be out in public for 1/3 of the day. And that is an unacceptable infringement on my First Amendment right, in my opinion.
Well, sadly, the people in Oxfordshire, are probably not possessed of enough testicular fortitude to do what they should do, which is just form a large angry mob and go and physically rip the equipment restricting their movement out.
No, the days of Thomas Cranmer are long over. There's no courage in Oxford.
Because that's what they should do. I mean, if they're going to be tyrannical, they should take those machines, they should pick them up, they should march them to the outside of the council offices and then pile them in a big pile on the front lawn. And if they want to light them on fire for good measure, I'm all in favor of an extra bonfire night. That seems like that's just good civil disobedience. I'm not saying they should hurt anybody or do anything like that. They should just say, no, we're not going to let you do this.
Or just, take them down to the river and do a, raft conversion project on them.
Find out if they're a witch.
Yeah, exactly. Witch dousing.
Yeah, this one's not a witch.
Nope. Come up. Another one.
Yeah.
Drowning the innocent.
Yeah.
It just made so much sense.
Yeah, I don't. I'm really surprised when I hear about all the power that these councils have in the UK, and it's like I don't know why. Is our one UK viewer here in the audience? I don't see him. Okay, that's too bad because actually I'd want to see what his comments are. But no, it's shocking to me that they have that kind of power. As an American, I can't even really fathom how anybody would choose to live like that.
But there you go.
Yeah, that's England. You go.
That's England. That's the way things are right now, and that's just the way things are going to be.
In the town of Cuckington-on-Gimp.
Cuckington-on-Gimp? Cuckington-on-Gimp?
Harumph.
Yes. Pretty good show.
Yes. We're all very proud of our town council here at Cuckington-on-Gimp. Never go full Greta. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my God. No. She's in one sad little manipulated kid who, as far as I can tell, has had her stolen from her by her parents, by her insane parents. She's actually kind of a tragic figure.
Yeah.
I know she thinks she's having it all her way right now, but she's, when Oprah stops returning your calls, that's a long lifetime to. You mean I peaked then? Yes, you did. You peaked.
Well, she's already past the point of being the angry kid. Now she's just another angry adult.
Right.
And that's not very entertaining.
The pissed off environmentalist. Please go over in that sector over there. So much rage, so much intolerance right now.
Well, she's not a scientist. She's just a person who's regurgitating a lot of opinions.
Right. But you notice that there's nothing in the form of a solution out of her other than, stop doing everything, but she doesn't have to do that, but we do. Yeah. So she's taking the John Kerry approach to environmental salvation.
Here's a scary thought. There's a greater than zero chance that she might end up becoming somebody's mother. Can you imagine for a moment you're like a 5-year-old boy and Greta Thunberg is your mother?
And you've just taken a cookie and you weren't supposed to, and she comes in and says, "How dare you?"
Or you exist and you're not supposed to.
Right, exactly.
She'll find a reason to be upset with you.
"I should not have given birth to you. You are not a human. You do many humans.
The planet would be better off if you hadn't been born. I'm sorry I took a second cookie. It's because of gluttonous white males like you that the planet's in the shape that it's in. I'm sorry, Mom. Why don't you love me?"
That's another thing that's quietly happening is there's a lot of sex choice abortions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. All the Chinese people, they're all selecting for boys, and the lesbians are all selecting for girls.
Mm-hmm. Means there's gonna be a lot of Chinese guys moving to the States to hook up with girls who have 2 mommies.
Yeah, girls with 2 mommies.
What a brave new world this is going to be.
Ah, jeez. Things have changed so much. It's really time for me to die.
Well, at least those kids will be halfway good at math.
Yeah. Stereotypes are us here. It means the zoo.
I was thinking about stereotypes earlier today. And I think that stereotypes are actually fine. The trick is don't worry about stereotypes, but what you don't want to become is a cliche. Fitting a stereotype is one thing, but becoming a cliche is another. And I think that
that's true.
I think that's sort of the line, and it's one of those questions you want to make sure you're on the right side of that line. Because there are all sorts of stereotypes in the world. Some of them are good, right? Like that one about, Asian kids are good at math. Well, they work really, really hard. One would hope they would be good at math. It's not like it's a surprise.
They're not really better than Americans in math.
But it's not a cliche. It's not a cliche, but it's a stereotype, and that's okay.
It's also an illusion. That's an illusion. The thing about Indians being bright and Chinese people being good at math. That's an illusion. Do you know why it's an illusion? Have you thought about it? It's an illusion. This was actually explained to me by a guy who graduated from IIT. And he is when I think of Harry, when I think of you, Harry, I think of Vamsi Polapragada, who is one of the brightest people I've ever known. I mean, I really have known some smart people, you among them. And he is in your class and you are in his class. Of that kind of quantitative reasoning ability and an active, aggressive learning mind, just and a great guy. In fact, you remind me of the American version of Vamsi in a lot of ways. But he explained it to me. He said, "Look," he said, "we're not any smarter than you are. what goes on over here. There are so many stupid people in India, you can't believe it. The thing is, there just are a lot of people in India, and we only have one university that is really the equivalent of probably your top 50 schools, and that's IIT. So everybody is trying to get in there, and so you have this crust at the top of really hardworking, usually Brahmin class intellectuals who have pretensions of getting into IIT, and about 3% of them are selected. These people have been through a brutal, brutal, brutal selection process where with that's coming from a billion people. And there's a similar effect in China. So we see their very best. We see people like Vamsi and his wife, who's just as smart as he is. The scary people still working for Avaya. We see their very best, but what we don't see is the pile of human beings, the mob of human beings who they are better than, and that mob of human beings who they are better than would be roughly proportional, at least in my friend's opinion, that to white people in America or Europe.
Well, I have an easy analogy for you.
Okay.
If when I was growing up, a lot of the American TV was pretty terrible, but you'd turn on PBS, right? Mm-hmm. And then you'd see something like Monty Python, or you'd see some other great English shows, and you think, wow, man, the English have fantastic TV shows. Mm-hmm. And you convince yourself that why can't American TV shows be as good as the English TV shows? And then you stumble across, whatever is the equivalent of Gavin and Stacey and go, oh God, all English shows aren't bad. I've just only been watching the ones that were good enough to filter their way across the pond.
Bingo. It's exactly very good analogy.
And that's basically what you're describing. Most of the people mathematically are Gavin and Stacey.
Yep.
But we only get to meet the Monty Pythons.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of smart people in the world, and God, I've enjoyed a lot of them. But like I said, mm-hmm. I enjoy lots of different kinds of people. Mm-hmm. I've actually
yes, you do.
I've always felt that everybody has something interesting to say, and this was it's kind of trite, and I always thought it was true. But one time, and this is a story I've been keeping in my back pocket. This is actually my go-to story if I have nothing to talk about. This is the story that I pull out. But it's the time, unfortunately, I'm not going to bring it up for that reason. I'm going to bring it out because it's actually relevant. I went to a party this one time, and there was an old guy standing there. And I usually like going over and talking to old guys because they always have the best stories. This guy's name was Mr. Peacock. I started talking to Mr. Peacock, and I slowly came to the realization that I had made a terrible mistake because exactly one interesting thing had happened to this man in his entire life. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a 70-year-old man who had done exactly one interesting thing
good Lord.
In his entire time on the planet. And I'm like, oh, well, so much for that hypothesis.
At least he's got one. Yeah, there are.
Would you like to know what it was, though?
Yes, I would. Absolutely.
His story was about transporting nitroglycerin on a bumpy road one time.
Good God.
Yeah.
Well, tell us the story.
Well, I was asking as many questions as I could because I'd heard a similar story from my grandfather about him riding in a Jeep in Adak, Alaska with a bunch of blasting caps in a box sitting on his lap when he was riding passenger in this Jeep. And so I sort of thought about the properties of nitroglycerin and how stable and unstable it was. And so I was asking him every question I could about how they loaded it and what they did to try to keep it from exploding and all these different things. And I struggled to get as much out of this dried out old lemon as I could. And there was just like this one drop of lemon juice that there's nothing. There's nothing. This guy was an empty vessel. He had one story the one time he moved nitroglycerin, and that was it. This bastard had done. He was the most NPC person I've ever met.
What did he do for a living in his life?
I don't remember. Everything else was so mind-numbingly dull. I blocked all of it out. I remember his name, and I remember that he once moved nitroglycerin, and I remember that it disproved my theory that everybody, that as people got older, they would just accumulate good stories. Nope, not this bastard.
Yeah.
It was such regret. It was the level of boring that I like to call the stun beam, where it holds you in your place and you can't move, and then your mind wanders, and then as you return, your soul comes back into your body. You struggle to try to figure out what it is you were talking about. Did you just find yourself sort of nodding your head and like, okay, what is this idiot talking about? And then you listen to the words and go, he's not making any sense. I can't figure out what we were talking about because what he's saying now means nothing.
Right.
The guy was an NPC. If the world is a simulation, I think that the proof of it is Mr. Peacock.
What do you call that zone again?
The stun zone. It's the stun beam, where they basically hit you with the stun beam.
I just love that.
And there's that other guy that I told you about, the computer science guy. We can't say his name.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He does that to people too.
Yes.
Yeah. He did it to me one time. I ran into him after not seeing him for a few years, and I was at this IEEE conference down in San Diego, and I ran into him, and he decided that I was going to be his friend and we were going to talk. I still don't remember exactly what happened. I must have been dead on my feet for 20 minutes pretending to listen to this guy. Yeah, good times.
Is the right thing to do to go and say, look, I'm just not interested in talking to you. I need this time in my life, and I need to not have you in it.
The guy has enough juice that's a bad idea.
Okay. All right.
But I know things that I just have to amuse myself because some of the stories I know about him,
I'm just trying to say you have the right to be left alone.
Yes.
And
or I guess if you're in Oxfordshire, you have the obligation.
It's yeah, right. Fine. Obligation. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Obligated to who?
You will stay home when you will like it.
Jeez. Things have just gotten so. I still think all of this is in response or as a result. A lot of this, the visibility of it is that crossways communication that social media has done. Look at the way that we're getting our news now. I look at about, 4 or 5 different news sites and a news aggregator and to get my news. I don't turn on NBC on TV. I haven't watched TV, a big TV. I haven't watched big TV in I don't know how long. If I want to watch something, I watch it on my PC.
You should get a Roku. Hook it up to your big TV. Then you can stream the stuff to your TV. Because honestly, watching TV on a computer is kind of annoying. I like actually sitting in front of a TV. If I'm going to watch like a movie, for instance.
Yeah.
Well, the other part of it is it's sort of, you don't shit where you eat, but you also, it's good to have like a workspace and a not workspace. Exactly. And if you use your computer for entertainment, then you're crossing the streams, and it just makes it that much easier to get distracted.
Yeah.
So you're sitting at your computer, you're supposed to be working, but then you go, well, let me go. I've worked long enough. I've earned a break. I'm going to go on YouTube and just, watch people get owned on YouTube or whatever, or you turn on Netflix or what have you. Having separate spaces for these things is in a lot of ways better.
It is.
So that's why like you have like your work laptop and your gaming PC, and you don't do it's just, I don't know, if people have a problem focusing and getting stuff done, there are rules like don't take your phone to the dinner table. You come up with these arbitrary rules, but exercising a little self-control is actually very good for you.
Yes, it is. Oh,
no is a beautiful word, and sometimes the best person to tell you no is yourself.
Learning to tell yourself no is a life skill.
Yep.
That is a life skill. That is one thing, boy, I have drilled that into my kids and my grandkids. Is the importance of self-regulation, and how when something's wrong, the easiest fix you can effect for the situation is to fix something in yourself.
There's a simple way to enhance concentration and memory, and it is very, very simple. You just let your bladder get uncomfortably full.
Right.
I'm
with death, but
yes. Seriously, this is a thing you can do. They've actually done studies, and the self-control that you have to exercise to not think about your full bladder actually helps people focus. It's a thing that people have actually tested it. If you think about it for a bit, it's just, if what you find is that with people, if you have no self-control, a lot of bad things tend to happen, and exercising just a little bit of self-control helps you sort of bootstrap other good habits. So
a growing body of research on pee suggests that waiting to relieve yourself can actually boost your willpower.
Yep. Yeah, don't just give in to the first impulse right away. I mean, eventually you're going to have to empty your bladder. Nobody's suggesting that you make yourself sick. But if you're constantly going to the bathroom because it's easy and convenient, try waiting 20 minutes.
Yeah, so that when you go to Target to pick up a gallon of milk, you won't leave with 5 new T-shirts, a pair of workout shorts, a poncho, and, Halloween candy that was in a bargain bin.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing at Ace Hardware where they keep all the tools that are on sale is just the random assortment. Yeah, it's like,
that's just porn for me.
I really need a coping saw. This one's so cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Keyhole saw. I'll have a spare now.
Yeah. Yeah, I never know where to find that other one. I'll just keep this one on my belt. That
is me to a T.
I used to actually think it was interesting when I'd get done with my incredibly long day, or during the middle of it, to go by Fry's Electronics, which was this big store that sold pretty much everything.
Fry's.
So I would go to Fry's, and for the longest time, I would just go, and they had like a little cafe, so you could get like a decent sandwich. And so I'd get a sandwich, have a little meal and wander around.
Which Fry's did you go to? Did you go to the one that's down there in
I've been to many of them, so
okay. Yeah, this was when Fry's was like,
what was the gimmick? Was it the Pyramid? Was it the Wild West Mine? Was it which one was it?
Pyramid. It was the Pyramid.
Yeah, I've been to that one a bunch of times.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that's near Campbell, San Jose sort of thing. Yeah.
Yet another one that we have been.
The thing about me going to Fry's is people kept asking me if I worked there. And it's not like I was dressed in a Fry's uniform. I just give off this vibe of do you work here? It's like, no. Yeah. But I'll tell you what you need. But if you have a question, I'll help you. No, that's what I would do, seriously. And people would say, well, how do I spend my money? I just do that.
Yeah.
And
I would go in just to talk hardware with these guys.
Yeah.
It was important back then.
Well, Fry's was a lot of fun. But the point was you could get just pretty much everything there. And I would just wander around. And when USB was like a shiny new thing, you could go into this aisle of just USB things. And I would just buy some little $10, $20 USB thing often, just because it was novel. Like, I didn't know they made a USB version of this. So I would just buy it. And so I would have all of these things. My one big regret was that Marks and Spencer in the UK came out with a line of USB pole dancers. So you'd plug this thing in and then like this little plastic woman would spin around a pole. And that was considered sort of scandalous. So they pulled them off the market in the UK, and suddenly there was a huge pile of them at Fry's. And I convinced myself that I didn't need a USB pole dancer. And I still regret to this day that when I went back the next day after I changed my mind, they were all gone. Because that would have been like the most niche USB thing possible. They were actually reselling them for good money online.
Were they really?
Yeah. It was just this tacky collectible and people couldn't get enough of them.
Did it look like this?
I think so. It's been a long time.
That is the USB pole dancer that is available.
Yeah, I was simultaneously right and wrong to not get one. But it's USB. That was the only reason I was even interested. That's great.
I would have bought one in a heartbeat.
Yeah, what if you only have one device, though? Got to combine them. Yeah, well, that's what USB hubs are for.
Yeah, that's what USB hubs are for. Yeah, in fact.
You're not doing it right until you've got your hubs plugged into your hubs.
I was just going to say, daisy chaining the hubs.
God, daisy chain the hubs.
This is weird.
Don't get me started on different USB and
Oh, USA, B, and C? B, A.
Well, USB 1, 1.2,
1, 2, and 3, yeah.
2, yeah. Thanks, Steve Jobs. Because if it wasn't for, because honestly, it was a great idea on Intel's part, but it was Steve Jobs that made USB actually a reality. Steve Jobs was so smart. Yeah, well, what Steve did was he basically sold a computer that deliberately had shitty peripherals in order, and then added a standard to his computers that made it easy for third-party vendors to market products for his computer.
So he was trying to open up his product.
Well, it was even more clever than that. Because you'd go into a place like Fry's, and for the longest time there was just aisles and aisles and aisles of PC stuff. And there was like this one little section of Mac stuff.
I remember. And
that section of Mac stuff became less and less relevant because since USB became kind of a standard, people started putting it on PCs, and before you realized it, you had peripherals that could be used anywhere. So rather than him trying to convince people to make peripherals for his niche thing, he deliberately manipulated the ecosystem in a way that caused people to create a huge market for all these peripherals. He wasn't trying to just own and control everything. He was actually smart enough to know when to lose on purpose, which is not something that most people would do. It takes a lot of balls to lose on purpose.
No. Jobs really, I'm not going to say he was brilliant at being a businessman. He was brilliant in some ways in that way, but he made some gigantic mistakes. And needless mistakes, by the way.
Cube-shaped computers are cool, and Unix is awesome. So he got some things right.
Yeah, he did. And I thought Next was... I thought that was the most interesting thing in the world when that first came out.
It was pretty sweet. It was like a Sun workstation for regular people.
Yes, exactly. You could really get... it was really bringing down a lot of capability.
No, it was a good thing. But the whole Jobs history of Apple thing isn't really the issue. But I used to, just for fun, collect USB Gigas. and that was just like a thing that I did to just kind of blow off
Do you
steam
still have
because I
them?
was working all the time.
Do you still have them?
I have way too many of them. But at a certain point, they become so obsolete that you sort of don't care. But every now and then somebody will come up with some problem. I'll be, wait a second, somewhere in a banker's box, I have a device that does that. And then I'll just go, I'll go find it.
You never know.
I have a lot of old computer crap. I'm just not good about throwing it out.
Remember who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah.
I have QVT 102As from 1983.
QVT 102As. What is a QVT?
That's a terminal. That's a terminal.
That's what I was afraid you were going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Amber. I think I still have amber and green.
I'm pretty sure you don't need that now. I'm just gonna throw this out.
Serial connected.
Dude, there's a USB thing you can plug into your computer, which will then run through an adapter, and you can just use that.
A cable. I can solder you up a cable that terminal will work with.
Oh, I have my own rolls of rollover, basically 8-pin ribbon cable with my own crimpers and connectors and RJ45s. I know how to do that too.
You only need 4 pins, of course, for serial, but
yeah.
Anyway. How we do.
Well, that's back when things were hard. You'd have like mini computers and things of substance. So have like these big SGI workstations that were about quarter million a piece. But in order to make it so that you could actually function with them, I met this guy. He was a good guy. He ended up working for me later when I was elevated to bosshood, and he was the guy that actually taught me about how to make those cables. And so we would wire all these up to like a little RS6000 workstation, and run have a screen session for the console on each of these things. So you could basically SSH into this RS6000 and then use screen to attach to the TTYs of the consoles for all of these $250,000 workstations.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What year was that?
97. Even at that time, that was kind of old school knowledge. People still look at me and go, well, what terminal emulator did you use? And I said, CU. They go, what?
What?
Man, I used to remember when Z modem was cool.
Oh, yeah. What's wrong with Z modem?
Better than X modem. Better than X modem. Better than Y modem.
Yep. Z modem was the bomb as soon as I found out about it. X modem was toast.
Yeah. But again, very niche. We should probably put a pin in this.
Yeah. We're talking about computer minutiae that probably interest us more than our listening audience. But Harry, thanks for joining me tonight. It's always great to just sit down and talk with you like this. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, we never even got into who were the hottest vintage actresses.
We'll do that next week. But for tonight, I think we're done here, guys. Thank you, chat. Thank you guys so much for coming out and listening to us. It means a lot to have somebody who wants to come out and hear guys like Harry and me go on for a couple of hours. So thanks for joining us. Thank you, Harry. And thank the Lord.
Yeah. Thank you for showing
up. It's time to go to bed.
Yep.
And so we're going to close it up for tonight. The zoo is closed. Good night, everybody.